On this episode of the Bronze Metalist podcast, we talk about Odyssey to the West by Slice the Cake. Again, for me, anyway. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Bronze Metalist Podcast. I'm Kale.
I'm OJ.
We're two professional broadcasters. We like metal and we like to talk about it. And this week, I am revisiting, for the program anyway, Odyssey to the West by Slice the Cake, which came out in 2016.
Is it 2016 or 2015?
2016.
Because
That's when this came out.
I couldn't listen to this on my usual listening app. It wasn't available. This album was, so I had to go to the YouTubes
I see.
and listen to it. And it said copyright 2015 to the bottom of it.
That's probably when the copyright was filed, but
Probably.
that's not when
the release date.
This album languished in production hell for a while.
For reasons.
Was not actually, it was not released in the most forthright sort of way.
There was controversy.
Yeah. We'll talk more about that later. How are you doing, though?
I'm doing well. I'm feeling good. Let's see. What did I do this weekend?
Feeling good.
I told you last week I told you our cat had surgery.
Yes.
Anything since then? You know, I feel like my life is passing me by like a warm summer breeze. I feel like I'm doing absolutely nothing.
I mean, a warm summer breeze, it's better than life passing you by like a cold winter chill.
Sure.
At least it's warm and pleasant,
Which
right?
it's supposed to be on Friday. It's supposed to be upper 70s, right?
Yeah, it's going to be fucking nice as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially compared to last week when it was fucking cold as hell.
Yeah, and it's snowing.
Spring in North Dakota.
Yeah, April. April was that month.
April makes no fucking sense.
No, it doesn't.
State. It really does not. I'm hoping it's not too windy on Saturday. I could go down, get in the kayak, do some paddling around.
I know one thing I won't be doing this year.
What?
Be having a Viking on a stick or any of that.
So if you're not from North Dakota, you probably don't know much of anything about the Norse Coast Fest. If you are from North Dakota, you know of it. If you're from Minot, it's a tradition.
Sure.
The Norse Coast Fest is possibly no more forever.
Maybe.
I feel like somebody's gotta get the rights to that and continue it, right?
Sure. I mean, that was a big fucking deal. It was a lot of people, millions of dollars.
It was a big draw for people coming to the city.
Right. There's no writings now involved in it.
Yeah. Basically, so if you don't know what we're talking about, the Norse Coast Fest, if you're not one of our, people we know by name that listens, the Norse Coast Fest is an annual Scandinavian festival.
It's the largest Scandinavian festival in North America.
Or perhaps a Scandinavian heritage festival, you could call it.
It's pure Scandemonium.
It's said like a person who's maybe done a few ads for the event.
Indeed.
You can go there and they have like Scandinavian cultural exhibits. They have there are people from Scandinavian countries that come and sell wares that have been made there.
I remember every year they had the great master bakers too. The
master bakers?
Master bakers of Scandinavia. They'd bring their pies and show their wares, and these are the great master bakers.
Yes, and also definitely Scandinavian takes on fair food, I guess. Right. Viking on a stick, as you mentioned, which remind me again what Viking on a stick is.
It's a big meatball that's half that's hamburger, veal, and like pork.
Yeah.
And it's
three kinds of meat.
And it's dipped in batter and it's well seasoned. Yeah. And deep fried, and it is delicious.
Because
I'll eat 2 or 3 of them.
Meatballs.
Yeah.
When did meatballs become other than the fact that they are at IKEA?
I think
is that what makes them Scandinavian, or has meatballs always been a Scandinavian thing?
Swedish meatballs have always been a thing.
Okay.
It's a real deal.
Because when I think of meatballs, I think of spaghetti and meatballs, which is Italian. But I guess no culture owns the concept of ground meat shaped into a ball.
Right. I feel like that's something that's been picked up in several different cultures independently.
Yes.
Like writing and reading.
And making
speech.
The bow and arrow.
Yeah.
Spears.
Balls of meat.
It is a fundamental, or alcohol, a fundamental part of human civilization.
Indeed.
That all cultures of the world are founded upon. It's the meatball. But yeah, it's
we'll
not happening this year. It didn't happen last year because of the pandemic, which when they canceled it last year, everyone was like, "Oh, why are they canceling it so early? Everything will be fine by October."
Yeah, or late September, yeah.
And that's when, things were really fucking spiking here.
Yeah.
So it was very prescient of them. But then this year there's a real case to be made that it can be held safely.
Sure.
But I guess the people that run it just decided they were done, or what?
Well, I mean, the guy who was the president of it decided he was done forever. I mean, David Wrighton stepped down and David Wrighton's father, of course, Chester Wrighton, is the guy who invented the damn thing.
Okay.
It was his.
It's been a family affair.
Yeah. In 1978, it was the first Hustfest, and it's been going ever since and getting bigger and bigger. And of course, Chester passed away, and the mantle went to his son, David. And then, I mean, they're both writing radio and television.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not super familiar, but then again, I'm 25.
Yeah. Oh, you remember KXMC TV?
Oh, okay.
And KCJB Radio?
That's what those are.
Yeah. Well, that's what they used to.
They used to be anyway, before it got sold to Nexstar.
To Death Star. Yeah, they it was built up in the 40s and 50s.
Oh, wow.
By Chester Wrighton and his predecessors.
A dynasty.
And now
I just feel like it's such a big event.
Yeah.
That, like, if it were to be back, there's no way okay, I shouldn't say there's no way it wouldn't be profitable, but I feel like it would be.
Right.
If it was brought back for this year.
Yeah.
I feel like somebody's got to step up and do something, right?
I mean, it's an expensive thing to put on. They get top name, mainly country artists.
Yeah. That's what appeals to the demographic that goes to the Hustfest, which is mostly people my parents' age.
Yeah, and older.
Speaking, and older.
I really wish that they would get some true Scandinavian art on the stage there, like some music.
Like Immortal.
Oh, that'd be great.
Mayhem.
Yeah.
I think I made that last time.
I think so.
I went to the Hustfest. I made that joke. And probably a couple of years ago, we were talking about the Hustfest on this program, and we made that joke as well.
I think that would be hilarious if it ever comes back. What you and I should do is get a little bit drunk, because we'll need that for this.
Okay.
And put on corpse paint and wear just black leather with spikes on it and go in and be real Scandinavians.
Yeah. That sounded like a fucking South African accent.
God, I would have to work on the accent.
Oh, hey, man, I'm from... That was Jamaican for a second.
Go in sounding like Dracula or whatever.
See, my Scandinavian accent is just me doing impressions of characters from Skyrim.
Sure.
I used to be an adventurer like you.
I took an arrow to the knee.
Yeah. Hello.
I find your hand in my pocket. I'll cut off your hand.
Yeah,
whatever.
my Scandinavian accent is not. I can do a Finnish accent because it's fairly distinctive. They sound like this. This is the Finnish accent.
Sure,
they sound a little bit like this.
Yeah,
and welcome to the Hydraulic Press channel.
What is it, Toki? No, is he?
I can't remember his name. Oh, you're talking about from Metalocalypse.
Yeah.
He's Norwegian.
He's Norwegian.
Yeah, the Toki and Squiskar are Norwegian and Swedish, respectively. Because, of course, Squiskar Squigelf, the most Swedish name.
Yeah.
Who has blonde hair, blue eyes, and a long sort of face. The most stereotypically Swedish-looking person you can imagine. But anyway, yeah, it'll be... We'll have to see what happens with that.
Sure.
Somebody's got to be going right now. Like, what do we do? How do we keep this going?
Well, I think the problem is with doing it this year, even though you're right, there's a good case to be made for it. Is that the demographic that attends are old people.
It's true.
And your elderly are the most
But counterpoint, at the moment, the elderly are also the highest percentage of people that are vaccinated.
Yep.
So, yeah, I don't know. There's all kinds of ways about it, I think.
I haven't had lutefisk in so long.
I've never had lutefisk.
You've never had lutefisk?
No, I didn't have, because both my parents, well, I don't know about both my parents. My dad might like it. Neither of my parents liked it enough to insist that we eat it.
Well, see, same in my house. Neither of my parents would come near it.
I guess.
They wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. But I'm like, I'm here. This is what they eat here. And the people who made the chefs and whatnot you want me to make lutefisk? They're like, you fucking serious?
What's wrong with you? Yeah, I think both my parents got fed it growing up, having grown up Lutherans in North Dakota, which I think it's just a tradition in every Lutheran church in the state. Even if you're in traditionally German parts of the state, and not like the northern part of the state tends to have more Scandinavian, the southern part of the state tends to be more German.
Sure.
As far as ancestry goes. But even in like the southern parts of the state, they'll still have lutefisk like dinners at churches and stuff. And I think my parents, ended up eating lutefisk against their will. And both of them were just like, nope, not going to do that. I never had to eat Brussels sprouts either.
I love Brussels sprouts.
You just like all kinds. I bet if we went to Iceland, you would love Hakarl.
Yeah, this is great. This is a hot Carl.
It's the hot Carl.
I still remember working at the truck stop, and every year during the Hustfest, they would have a lutefisk dinner special. And I still remember this one woman, she's like 76 years old. She's running the lutefisk, and she even said out loud, I just don't know how they made lutefisk before microwaves.
So much easier.
So much easier in the microwave, and it tastes better.
You don't have to bury it in the sand for 5 months while it soaks in lye. Which is a part of the process.
It is.
Lye is a part of the process of making lutefisk.
And it's not. We're not saying lutefisk is an untruth. We're saying
yes, the poisonous chemical lye.
Right.
A chemical which, if thrown into your eyes, will
blind you.
Is used in the making of this food.
So I can use this to burn your skin off, or I can make a tasty meal with it.
Yes.
Tasty is a bit.
I feel like
stretch.
I feel like they should have had Hakarl at the Hustfest.
Yeah.
Even though like there's not a lot of Icelandic ancestry in this area, it's mostly Swedish and Norwegian.
Right.
But I feel like just as including the Nordic countries in there, I feel like they should have had some Hakarl available. I honestly don't know if it's legal to sell outside of Iceland.
It probably isn't. I mean, I feel like the green shark is
the Greenland shark.
Greenland shark, is somewhat endangered at this point.
Possibly. I honestly I don't know. I think I don't know if it has to be. Well, I think it does have to be made from Greenland shark. Maybe that was like traditional, and they've expanded it to other kinds of shark. I think shark hunting is not super great anyway, but Hakarl is. If you don't know what that is, it's chunks of prepared. Basically blubber from a Greenland shark, which are these sharks that live very deep in already very cold waters.
For hundreds of years.
And they live for an extremely long time. So long that they, like the oldest ones, end up going blind because their eyes are being like eaten by barnacles and shit.
Sure. They just,
They move very slowly. They're very big as well. They're the size of like a great white shark, but they're very slow. They're meat also, and the fat, their flesh is poisonous because it contains a large amount of chemicals which allow them to survive at such deep depths.
Right.
And so to prepare it, you essentially have to let it begin to ferment in like a shack, as the shark hangs in a shack for several months.
They actually found one recently. Maybe it wasn't a Greenland shark, but it was a shark from the North Atlantic. It might have been a Greenland shark. But they found one, and they did some tests on it. I don't know what kind of tests they do, but they said this one was born in the 17th century.
Yeah. No, they can live an extremely long time. They're crazy. They're crazy animals that just sort of swim around. There's footage you can find online of like deep water, like probes looking at oil rigs and stuff in the North Sea, and Greenland sharks just kind of fucking bumping into them because they're completely blind.
Right.
Because they're so goddamn old. They just bump into shit all the time because they can't see, but they're so big that nothing eats them. And also their flesh is poisonous. So I feel like an orca might have fun with them, but orcas probably avoid them because their flesh is poisonous.
Right.
So who knows?
Although orcas do kill for sport.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So maybe they would do that. Mm-hmm. They probably just leave them alone. A Greenland shark. It wouldn't be killing a Greenland shark for sport would be like hunting an 80-year-old man.
Yeah, that's a just kind of.
Now I'm thinking of the SpongeBob scene where the people keep on beating up the old guy. How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? I love the young people. Off topic, just because I wrote it down because it's a thing that I've been listening to a lot. I shared with you a acoustic folk cover of a song by The Offspring, one of their more popular songs called The Kids Aren't All Right. And I've been obsessed with it because it's just very good.
It's a very good version of that. I mean, it's completely different than the way The Offspring did it.
Yes.
They have a new album. I told you that, right?
Yes, you did. I haven't checked it out yet. The Offspring are a punk band that's a bit before my time.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking I have not checked out very much punk. Like I've delved, further back with you into metal and whatnot, but punk, generally speaking, I haven't listened to things that are older than a couple of decades.
I remember one time I went to go visit my mom and dad, and my little brother and sisters were still like elementary school students. So I was in my 20s, and the album Smash by The Offspring had just come out like a year before.
Okay.
And so I just had to have a copy of it, and I'm listening to it on my CD player in my car. I'm old.
I have a CD player in my car.
Anyway, I came down visiting with my young daughter Abby, who was like just not born to. I mean, it was just after my divorce.
Okay,
and my sister. Maggie, who had to have been 11 years old at the time, and I drove into town from my parents' house. We were listening to this. She's, I love this song. I love this song. I know these guys. I've heard this. This is great. And then we came back, and my sister says to my mom, "Hey, Owen has Offspring." And my mom's like, "Yes, he does." And we both looked at each other like, let's not explain to her that it's a
thing.
Yes, he has a child. Yeah. You're right, Mom.
Mommy, he has kids. Like I don't know. I'm just like your mom, just thinking like, well, that's a weird way to phrase it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Vocabulary on this girl. I've been playing a lot of Halo 5 multiplayer just because I paid for Xbox Live.
Yeah.
Just because I specifically wanted to play Halo 5 multiplayer, and so I've gotten back into it. It's fun. It's good, like modern multiplayer. It doesn't feel, because I've never been very good at Halo multiplayer or any multiplayer shooter ever.
Yeah.
So I'm not particularly good at this either, but it feels nice. It feels good.
Good.
I played through the campaign again as well. It still sucks. It still sucks as bad as it did 6 years ago almost. That's how long it's been since the last full-fledged Halo game came out. The last main one in the series, it's been almost 6 years. It will be over 6 years by the time Halo Infinite finally comes out.
Wow.
And it's just been a really long time. I'm surprised anybody's still playing Halo 5. But yeah, I fucking hate that campaign. It's just so. Let me bitch for a little bit.
Go for it.
So, you know how not to design mechanics for a campaign? Here's how not to do it.
Okay.
Don't make your progress reliant, especially in a shooter, reliant on friendly NPCs, on friendly AI, because they will always let you down. because they're stupid. Like, very few games generally have made co-op AI stuff work. Like one of the ones I can think of, people enjoy the Last of Us series, the first one.
Sure.
A lot of that has, you've got Ellie following you around. And then BioShock Infinite. Is it called Infinite? BioShock Infinite? I think so. It was the most recent BioShock one. Anyway, in that one, there's a NPC that follows you around, and she's pretty helpful because she stays out of your way.
Sure.
And then throws you stuff that she finds around the map in the middle, and you can catch it in the middle of combat, and it's useful. In Halo 5, they do a thing that previously was around in Gears of War, where if you take enough damage to where normally you would have died, you instead enter a down but not out state, where you have to wait for your teammates to come and pick you up. This is all right maybe in co-op where you're playing with other human beings, but in campaign, it's really frustrating because you can be sitting there on the ground dying, begging for your AI teammates to come and pick your ass up, get picked up, and then instantly go back down onto the ground. And I would much prefer to just die and reset the checkpoint because it's quicker and less annoying.
Right.
And it's really frustrating, especially since so many of the other gameplay mechanics in the game and the campaign are so much tighter and more streamlined. And that just feels like such a pain in the ass. And I'm glad that Halo Infinite seems to be returning to, you're the Master Chief, you're fucking by yourself. Like, you have friendly AI and people that you can meet and run into and have conversations with. But as far as killing aliens, you're on your own. And I like that because the one of the things that feels best to me throughout that series is the feeling of just chewing through rooms full of enemies at a time.
Sure. In
a way that's not quite like Doom 2016 is kind of like that. Doom Eternal is not really like that because you're fucking zipping around all over the place and constantly backing up and running in circles and you meat hooking across the map and doing all kinds of crazy shit. Whereas Halo, it's like you're moving forward. It's a pretty linear experience, but it feels good because you're just chewing through aliens. And like in the later games, like when you're killing grunts, their gas tanks are flying off, and there's a very visceral, good feeling to it that triggers something in my goopy goblin gamer brain that is also the sort of like response that I've become addicted to, that also means I have less patience for like really well structured story based RPGs where I get bored if there's not combat every couple of minutes. Like, I can enjoy Baldur's Gate 3 because there's a lot of combat, but I am struggling to play Disco Elysium because it's all just reading.
Sure.
It's basically a visual novel that you move between conversations in, and I'm struggling with that because the little goblin inside me wants to kill things.
That was me when I was 13, 14 years old. Even, Infocom games. Infocom. Text adventure games.
Yes.
That's all. It was not even graphics.
I guess sort of the pre-LucasArts era where they added graphics then, but it was still the basic adventure style of like things like Escape. Is it Escape from Monkey Island? No, The Secret of Monkey Island is one of the first big LucasArts games where it's like a pirate adventure, essentially. And you have to use combat is based on witty wordplay. That's how you do combat in the Monkey Island games is basically through insult contests.
Well, I played through an Infocom game. I played through most of it before discovering that there was actually a book called Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh,
yeah.
I think there was a similar game I've seen on the Oni Plays channel, which is Chris O'Neill is an animator that does Let's Play. Anyway, he did a playthrough. Not a playthrough. He played a little bit of a Lord of the Rings text adventure, like old DOS text adventure,
Sure.
DOS text adventure,
Disk operating system
for Lord of the Rings, and that was like, oh my god, this is so. This looks to me frustrating. Of like, this is what you had to deal with. But yeah, it's I crave the cheap dopamine hit of like, you accomplished something, you accomplished something. Whereas again, to compare it to Disco Elysium, it's like, I've been playing this for 5 hours and I haven't accomplished a single goddamn thing. I'm just learning more and more and more. If I wanted to be ground down by reality, I'd go back to reality.
We went through some of our discs and realized that the game God of War 4, I had gone and beat all the Valkyrie.
Oh.
Have you beat the Valkyrie?
I haven't beat a single one of them.
A single one of them, really?
Yeah. I am not a glutton for pain.
So Maximus says to me, my youngest child, he says, I want to go through and just beat them all. Do you have a save on here with just the Valkyries left? I'm like, yep.
Oh, boy.
So he's beaten 7 of the 9 of them.
Oh, my God. I think that even at 25, I don't think I have the reflexes to fight any of them.
Yeah, because you got to have some reflexes.
I watched the channel Girlfriend Reviews. The boyfriend of Girlfriend Reviews had played through God of War and like had gotten close to beating all the Valkyries, but didn't do it. They got a PS5 with a new, upgraded version of God of War. They wanted to do a replay because it was one of the first games they played when they started the channel. And he spent like a week straight, like 5 hours a day trying to beat them. I think he was playing on like the hardest difficulty.
Oh, really? Why wouldn't you start
there's an achievement for beating all the Valkyries on the hardest difficulty.
Oh, really?
And so like he finished the Valkyrie Queen at like 5 a.m. That he had stayed up. And I don't have, I think Dark Souls I could do because there's just one difficulty level in Dark Souls. And like you learn, I don't think many of the bosses in Dark Souls require the same lightning reflexes that they do in God of War.
Yeah.
Dark Souls is a little bit slower of a game. Bloodborne gets a bit faster. Which I could finally play Bloodborne because I have a PlayStation, but I haven't done it yet. I haven't played any of the FromSoft games.
Why not?
Just because it seems like a very painful experience that I don't know I would get a lot of enjoyment out of in the end. I'd probably be done and be like, okay, I'm glad I accomplished something, but man, that was miserable. Or maybe I'd really like it. I don't know. They're medieval RPGs, and I like the style. Everything's very dark and gritty and gloomy, and everybody's sad, and the world is ending.
That's why I still feel timid about a game you mentioned before, the new Doom game.
Doom Eternal.
Doom Eternal.
See, Doom Eternal is not... I mean...
There are bosses in it, right?
Yeah, there are bosses. Not a ton. If you play it on, like, I'm Too Young to Die, it's much more enjoyable. I get very, 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 very frustrated with it at times when I play on higher difficulties, especially like last May, I was pretty good at it because I'd been playing it for like a month and a half straight over and over again. But like my recent attempt to play through and beat the 2 new DLCs, I got extremely frustrated with certain mechanics just because you want to be like super mobile and always running around the map, but then you'll get caught on one little piece of fucking geometry and get stuck on it and then get cornered by 15 different demons that rip you to and it's so infuriating, especially when like you accidentally, you're strafing and you run, into an imp. And like the Doomslayer on any difficulty, he's a glass cannon. Like he's got a billion different guns and he can rip people to shreds, but he can't take a fucking hit.
Sure.
Especially in Doom Eternal. I don't think it was quite as bad in Doom 2016, but in Doom Eternal, like everything will rip you to shreds in seconds. You cannot stop moving ever. And it can be very exhausting just mentally to do that for hours. And I think on I'm Too Young to Die, it would be more fun, probably. I had to turn it on to that my first playthrough when I first got the game. I was like, I could probably do this on Hurt Me Plenty. And then like an hour later, I was like, no, I'm turning it down to I'm Too Young to Die. Because there was a big learning curve compared to Doom 2016. Because they introduced all kinds of new systems with like the weak points in the falter system. And I still don't really know how the falter system works. It's like a tiny little half-second stun that you can do to like interrupt enemies' attacks and whatnot.
Sure. And then barrage them.
And there are certain weapons that work to falter demons if you hit them at the right time. And I don't know what they are. I don't have that memorized. It's one of those things where you just where like they want you to be thinking like, oh, there's this demon. I need to pull out this weapon and do this combo. And it's like, it's too much. It's too much for my brain.
Too much.
Speaking of things that are a lot for your brain.
Yeah, this album.
Slice the Cake, Odyssey to the West, an album that came out in 2016. Talked about it with Jaron a couple years ago. This is an album that probably wasn't going to come out. It's made by three people, a team of three people. I should have had their names pulled up.
One of which did not want the...
Yes.
Release.
I know one of them was named Gareth Mason. I know another one of them was named Jonas Johansson, or perhaps Jonas Johansson. And then there was another one who I think might have been named Jason Richardson, David Richardson. It was the team of vocalist, keyboardist, lyricist with Gareth. And then the Johansson was on guitars, drums, programming, a whole bunch of stuff. And then Richardson did composition for a lot of the like sort of orchestral pieces you can kind of hear in the background. I think a lot of the album's overall structure, I don't know exactly how much of the songwriting he directly contributed and how much of it was structure to fill in with details that still makes up the bulk. I don't know exactly what the workload here was, but I do know that after being in production for like 3 years, the other two members of the band were fairly frustrated. Apparently Gareth Mason has a bit of an ego. Got into some conflicts with Mr. Richardson, and they, you know, kind of the album was floundering, wasn't going to come out, and then finally Gareth apparently talked to Jonas, and they decided they were going to release it. It got released on April Fool's Day.
2016.
Yeah, maybe just as kind of a ha-ha, because there were a lot of people who were fans of Slice the Cake, who had been waiting forever and ever and ever, and they had released singles. They like it seemed like the album was going to come out, and then for whatever reason somebody got cold feet and didn't want to put this out. The composer had apparently said he wanted to find somewhere else to use the work that he had done.
And not with them.
The other two didn't agree, and the album came out as it existed. And I think because of that, there are moments where the mix is suboptimal.
Sure.
Everything is mostly finalized as far as the recording itself, but there are little production touches that this album could really use to go from being really good and really interesting to being a masterpiece.
Right.
It's held back a little bit by the production and maybe a little bit by how pretentious it is. This is a very pretentious album.
It's very pretentious.
This is an extremely pretentious, progressive deathcore concept album.
You got. It starts out with some great poetry slam.
Yeah.
And then some deathcore, and then it mellows down to a little poetry slam again.
Yeah. There's a lot of. I think Gareth Mason must be a big Shakespeare fan. The lyrics on here, I think, very much are meant to evoke that sort of time period of poetry and whatnot. And also, it seems like the concept itself is meant to be set in a time like that. But what were you going to say?
I didn't do the measuring. Is it in iambic pentameter?
I don't know. I don't know if it's in a specific meter or not, but it's just, I think it's meant to evoke that sort of style, which I'm not really sure. It's been a long time since I've listened to their previous albums, so I don't know if that was his style on the previous albums or if that was just something specifically brought up for this album. It came out as it was. Generally speaking, it's pretty good. There's one moment I think on one moment that I really don't like of production in I think it's Stone and Silver Part 3 or Part 2, where there is a bass solo where it sounds like they had while recording, they were like, okay, we want a bass solo here, and that was like their first take.
Yeah.
Like they're like, okay, I don't have anything written down for this bass solo, but let me see if I can improvise something. Oh, that sounds good. Okay, we've got it recorded. We'll do another pass and get it cleaner. And then they never did that. Because it sounds really, really messy and muddy in a way that the bass on the rest of the album doesn't.
Right.
It's just like this one piece, was in Pro Tools, and that was where it was sitting when the album got mixed and got compiled and whatnot, and just didn't ever get fixed. And so that's what we hear, where it's like you can hear, you can kind of tell that it's being picked, I think, instead of finger picked. Somebody's using a plectrum, and it's just like
a plectrum,
and it's just like it sounds messy and a little clacky, a little thwappy, not very clean.
As the rest of it sounds.
The rest of it sounds pretty good. Again, it could need like another pass of polish.
Right. One more coat of paint.
But for the most part, this album is, I would say, 95% complete. The vocals are a little low at times. I would have preferred to them to be higher, especially in an album that is so lyrically dense.
Right.
Holy shit. So I'm going to talk about the concept.
Okay.
Because last time I listened to this, most of the times I've listened to it, I don't think I really had a good understanding about what this album is actually about.
Sure.
I don't think there's anything particularly personal going on in this album. I don't think there's anything super deep in the way that something like Pink Floyd might be, like The Wall.
The Wall, right.
The Wall has a ton of stuff that's extremely personal to
Roger Waters.
Yeah. Roger Waters. I wanted to say Roger Glass. I think I'm mixing up two musicians there.
You are.
Roger Waters. A lot of stuff is very, very personal to him on that album. This is not like that. I think it's mostly sort of a fantastical tale. Basically, what I wrote down for the concept, because I wanted to get something in writing. So there's a man who dreams about a holy mountain, essentially, where he will find God. There's a voice in his head that's telling him, hey, you have to go to this place to find enlightenment.
To the west.
Yeah, go west. There's this mountain. There you will behold the true nature of the universe, essentially, which is, I was doing, looking up, that's a central tenet of Gnosticism.
Yep.
If there could be called one. Gnosticism was in the very early days of Christianity, just sort of around as a idea of people who believed that there was a God, but most people could not discern any sort of detail about them, and that the way to transcend the misery that is existence was to attain enlightenment. It's kind of like Buddhism a little bit.
Sure.
And some people have drawn connections between the two. But essentially that the world is, an awful, horrible, corrupt place, and that the only way to transcend that is to understand the true nature of existence and that sort of thing. And Gnosticism like crossed all kinds of different religions and incorporated things from Judaism and early Christianity and all sorts of places. It was
Jainism.
Yeah, in the 2nd century, it was officially declared heresy by the early Catholic Church.
The very early Catholic Church.
Yeah, very early Catholic Church. And so generally it sort of made a couple comebacks every once in a while in certain periods. But for the most part, it's associated with, that early AD era in the Mediterranean region, basically. But I think that's sort of what a lot of this comes from. Also an association, the word with the Holy Mountain. I think of the Alejandro Jodorowsky movie.
Sure.
If you don't know, Alejandro Jodorowsky is a surrealist film director from Mexico who's also made a movie called El Topo, which two members of the Beatles were big fans of. I think it was John and Paul were big fans of the movie. So much so that their producer actually financed The Holy Mountain, the movie.
Wow.
Which The Holy Mountain incorporates all kinds of mysticism and stuff like that. There's stuff about tarot and the different planets and all kinds of crazy shit, because Jodorowsky makes weird fucking movies. But so I'm thinking of that as well. Maybe Gareth Mason's a fan of that. I'm thinking of all kinds of different weird things. So the concept sort of continues. So the guy who's obsessed, he's like going crazy with this idea that he needs to leave. He leaves behind his betrothed, his beloved wife, which he feels bad about, but also seems to have some internalized kind of misogyny going on there. I was listening to it and reading the lyrics in time, which I haven't done for most albums I've listened to, but this was just, I want to understand this and see if there's something deeper going on. And I don't know how deep it really is. I think it's just more of once you get past the poetry, it's a fairly basic story, I think. So he's sort of driven mad. He's kind of the sort of puritanical ideal of everybody but me is a horrible, sinful beast. And then he ends up deciding, once he reaches his destination, I think he kind of realizes that he's crazy and he's been wrong and he needs to go back, and he's broken by that realization. And that's the last line of the album is, I have nothing left to say. He's been writing,
he says it over and over and over.
He's been writing a journal throughout this process, which is, I think, part of the lyrics is meant to be this journal that we find. But there's a lot of like biblical imagery in here as well. A lot of like, I would say antediluvian biblical imagery, which, if you don't, antediluvian means before the flood. Right. Basically when God was the meanest, that part of the Bible, when he was destroying cities and making people get swallowed by whales and stuff. Although I don't know if actually that story is before the flood or not, but I don't believe early Old Testament stuff of God being real mad at people.
Yeah, him covering up his mistakes.
Basically, yeah. But there's a lot of like Old Testament sort of imagery in here. A lot of ash and salt and stuff like that. But yeah, that's the sort of basic concept. Is that did you grasp that while you were listening, or did it sort of pass you by?
It kind of passed me by. I mean, I didn't really get to, I wish I had got to listen to this on my usual app, because a lot of times I'll have the lyrics there and I could look at the lyrics while I'm
Does Amazon do that? Can you like watch the lyrics go by in real time?
Yeah, they have that. They have that feature.
I might have to switch over to Amazon for certain stuff, just because ages ago, eons ago, when I first got Spotify, when I was like sophomore in high school, they had that feature where you could click lyrics and it would pop up line by line as the song went along. And then that feature went away because whatever website they had contracted with to do that decided they didn't want to do that anymore. And despite how much fucking money they have, they've decided to never integrate their own way of doing that.
Right. It's not with all the songs on Amazon, just some
of them. But like I forgot that feature existed until today. And I am mad that it's still not back in one way, one form or another, because it would be great for especially albums like this where it is so dense, but also half the lyrics are kind of undiscernible because they're being deathcore. They're being growled at you. And this isn't strictly deathcore. There's a lot of other kinds. He has a good
singing voice.
He does. Gareth has a nice voice. And I think he actually ended up with some nodes because of this album. And you can hear they have a live performance because they got back together this year.
Nice.
And they have a live performance you can listen to online. And the way that he does his clean singing in the live performance is much cleaner than the way he does it on the album, which is generally very strained, just belted.
Right.
There's a lot of tension in his voice. There's a lot of grit.
Great.
It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And it works really, really well for the concept of the album of this guy who's just, crazy and fervent and losing his mind, and he's got so much torment and oh god. So as part of the pretentiousness of this album is just how anguished it all is. Like after a certain point, you're just kind of like, okay, get over it.
All right, it's been over 100 minutes.
Yeah, get over it. I did listen to, which I didn't make you listen to it, but I listened to Odyssey to the Gallows as well, which is meant to be a companion piece to this that you listen to first. And that I think is where the concept comes the clearest, because it's mostly just the spoken word. And so it sort of becomes clear like, oh, this is a dream that this protagonist is having. There's a middle portion where it's very clear. Well, it's not very clear, but it seems like part of this dream is maybe like the devil talking to him. There's also one of the songs is titled The Horned God, which I'm wondering if that's a reference to like Baphomet, which I think was a part of Gnosticism and whatnot. But this is the second week in a row we've brought up Baphomet.
Sure. Let's make that a habit.
Let's just talk about Baphomet every week.
And now for our segment entitled
Our Favorite One-Titted Goat Man. Goat person. Can't really call Baphomet a man. It's a goat person. A goat being. A human-goat hybrid who has one female breast and one male breast.
Right.
And goat legs and a goat head.
I kind of have two female breasts now. Yeah. But, that's what happens.
I got the titties too. Don't worry.
I was gonna say it will happen to you.
No, it already has. Definitely. I've had man tits for a while. I was surprised. I went to the walk-in clinic, and I was kind of surprised that I haven't gained a significant amount of weight over like the last year or so.
Yeah,
I was at 230, which is not.
Did you go to the dentist?
Great. Ha. But yeah, I was at 230 pounds, which I thought was, I'm overweight, but I'm not super overweight. I thought I think it's about the same as it was a while ago. Anyhow, let's talk about criteria here. Slaps. It says, slaps. The score, I was looking around. I couldn't find a ton of reviews. This album sort of, because it was a surprise.
Sure.
Because people had no idea when or if it was going to come out. This album didn't get a ton of professional attention. I think it would have gotten far more if it had a traditional release. But generally, people are very fond of this album as it was. People weren't so keen on the controversy around it of like, is this even ethical to listen to if one of the chief people who made it did not want it to be listened to, and sort of brought up that idea. Richardson did comment and say that he's glad that people liked it. He would have preferred that something else had been done with it, but he's glad that people enjoyed it at the very least, which I guess I'm happy about that.
Sure.
He said he seemed to say like, it's out. The album's out. I can't undo that. So I'm glad you like it at the very least. His name was Jack Richardson. Jack Richardson was his name. And I don't know if I can't imagine he's involved in the current incarnation of the band.
Right.
I feel like that would be very awkward. It'd be interesting if he was, though, because I know, the other two have gotten back together along with people for live performances, and they're working on new material, which will probably be more in the vein of their previous albums before this, which were not nearly as expansive and massive and difficult to grasp. Still great kind of progressive extreme metal, but not quite the same. What's your favorite song?
I think the last song, the outro song, Holy Mountain.
Holy Mountain and Destiny's Fool.
Yeah, well, Destiny's Fool.
Destiny's Fool and then Holy Mountain.
Right. Destiny's Fool is the very clean, sort of a ballad, sort of a sad.
Yeah. And then it leads into the heavy, the heavy first half of Holy Mountain, softer middle part,
and then heavy again
for the end. There's a lot of songs that are like this is one of those albums where songs have parts that are split up into different tracks,
right? So it gets confusing.
It's prog,
right?
It's a prog album. You have to do that in a progressive metal album. Songs need parts. You can't just have one song and then another song. You need to make it clear these are parts of the same work. I wrote Stone and Silver Part 1.
Okay, sure.
I really like the bass intro to that. And then there's a part where there's a riff that's been going on for a little while, and then it comes back even harder. I like that's just, it appeals to the goblin brain. Deep down there. That phrase I use, by the way, goopy goblin gamer brain, is borrowed from a YouTuber named Nakey Jakey, who's very funny. You should go watch some of his videos.
Nakey Jakey. He's wearing clothes, right?
Yes, he is wearing clothes. Right. He does all his videos sitting on an exercise ball for some reason. But he's hilarious. But yeah, goopy goblin gamer brain is a phrase that I have adopted. It's fantastic. But yeah, I that just like gets me really hard.
Wow.
Oh God, no. I didn't that was not intentional.
There you go, Mrs. Border. Have a good night.
Ladies,
if you want to know
what gets me going, it's this specific song and only this song. I have the world's most specific fetish. It is this song. But yeah, I like a lot of, this is one of those albums where I have trouble picking out a particular favorite just because so much of it bleeds into
right. It's like one big piece, really.
Yes,
it is. That was the only way I was able to really distinguish because that second to last song really sets that section and then the final song apart from the rest of it. And so that really it hit me.
You knew that this was the end. Yeah. The end was coming. The journey was almost over.
Right.
I also really like I like those last two songs as a pair. I really like Castle in the Sky, which is like a romantic song in the middle.
And a great Miyazaki movie.
Yes, which I'm sure it's called Castle in the Sky Part 2. There's no Part 1 on this album. There's a Part 1 on an album called Other Slices, which I think is a very tonally different song on there, but conceptually, I guess they're linked. But I really like that Gareth's singing on that is phenomenal. And then I really like, there's a particular part in Dark Carnival where I don't know if it's Gareth or if it's a guest vocalist, but there is this like demented jester sort of voice that someone does where it just, I've never heard anything like it. It's kind of like Travis Ryan's goblin vocals that he does.
His goopy
goblin gamer vocals. But like that sort of level of like, this is a weird vocal in metal that other people don't do.
Right.
And it sounded very painful, but it was also like sold whatever character that was meant to be or whatever part of the protagonist's brain.
Have you ever watched Travis Ryan make those sounds?
Oh yeah, he does all kinds of weird stuff with his face and with
his tongue.
His tongue sticks out and does. That's what you got to do to make the noises. Sure. That's what you got to do.
I just feel like the first time he did it in front of anybody, they're like,
"What is that?
Do we need to get like a fork?"
Are you having an episode, Travis? I've seen some things where people make fun of like the faces that like especially deathcore vocalists make while they're doing vocals, because I think more so than traditional death metal, deathcore vocals tend to get pretty wild and just like so much deeper and more guttural or like way higher. There's a lot more range.
A lot more dynamic.
Yeah. Hey, we did it. But so vocalists end up making all kinds of weird faces to get those noises to come out of their vocal system. I think it's neat. What medal are you bestowing upon this? Like Mas Kanata to Chewbacca?
It's close to big gold, but it's a silver for me.
I kind of have to agree. I put an ellipses for metal on my little board here, just because I
mean it's.
I want to give it a gold just for the achievement of it.
Yeah, I totally hear that.
But it's also one of those things where I know I cannot like readily re-listen to it because there's too much stuff. And like part of the reason why it's taken me years to like give it an honest re-listen is because I burnt myself out on this by listening to it way too much just because this vibe was something that I desperately apparently wanted in my junior year of college. I would later find Where Owls Know My Name by Rivers of Nile, which is an album I haven't mentioned aloud for quite a time.
Which is weird because you were mentioning it like every week for a while there.
Yeah. But like that album, I think hit the same spots in ways that were much more succinct and repeatable. Sort of the melancholic epic progressive metal that was not quite so pretentious in a way. I'm really excited to see more stuff from Slice the Cake. I need to listen to The Man with No Face a little bit more of their previous one of their previous albums.
It's different than this.
Yeah, there's also other slices. Things are a lot less theatrical on those records, where this is, meant to feel theatrical.
I was listening to something from Slice the Cake, and I don't know what it was from. It wasn't from this, but it was one of those things where the song sounded like one of the band members forgot a thing at home and he had to run home, but they let the tape roll and the microphone's on in the studio. So for like 10 minutes, it sounded like just everybody just fucking around.
Oh, that's probably other slices. I think that the nature of that album was specifically like, hey, we normally write like unified concept albums. Here's all of the shit that we wrote that we couldn't place into our albums.
Which odds are it's going to be one of my favorite things they do.
Probably.
Because that's how
probably. A lot of people really like that one. It's a neat album. I need to give that another listen. Yeah, Slice the Cake is an interesting band. I'm happy that they're back in whatever capacity they are. I'm excited to hear more from them in the future because they're working on new stuff. So I hope I don't think anything's ever going to quite reach the ambition that this had. I don't think they should try for that either.
Right.
Because
you've done it.
Yeah. And also this didn't turn out very well on the personal aspect. Like it's good to listen to, but personal relationships were very strained. So I hope they go for something a bit more easily attainable.
Like K-pop.
Yeah, K-pop. Sure. Next week, what are you thinking?
Well, I think it's finally time I bring this one to the table. I think we've talked about it, like lightly, we've lighted on it over the years, talking about it for various reasons. Okay. I think we're going to go back to 1985 for next week for the album entitled Metal Church.
Oh, God.
By the band Metal Church. That contains the song
Metal Church.
Metal Church. It was recorded in the year of Metal Church. Right, yeah.
In the town of Metal Church. Yeah. All right.
I feel you should give it a listen. You'll understand. I feel you will understand metal better after having heard this. You'll go, oh, okay.
Well, I will have been enlightened by the Holy Scripture
of the Metal Church.
Of the Metal Church. So I will become confirmed in the Metal Church. Perhaps one day I could be ordained in the Metal Church.
Sure.
All right. Metal Church. But see, this is the thing. Is even though this should be so easy to remember, I know it's going to be next Tuesday, and I'm going to be like, what album? What are we listening to?
Metal Church. The band?
What album by Metal Church? Well, you see. Anyway, there it is again. I think I was pretty good about not using that word this episode.
Yeah, you tried.
I didn't try.
You didn't try?
I wasn't thinking about it.
Really?
I believe what happened is I was just so engrossed in actually talking about the album that I didn't need to do segues for a while. So now that we've said the word and I've done my segue, visit us on social media.
Indeed. On
Facebook or Twitter. We post episode links there if you want to listen on your browser or just subscribe on some measure of feed. You can subscribe to our Libsyn feed there. You get email updates or something. I don't know. Do what you want.
Be free. We're everywhere.
Get your iPhone out and open up the podcast app. If that's not how you're listening to us already, subscribe to our feed there.
It'd be weird if they're listening to us on cassette right now. That'd be cool.
Or on vinyl.
On vinyl.
This album's on this album?
Yeah. This
is an album.
Podcast is a.
We've been going for a little over an hour. This is an album. Or find us on the podcast source, which is Libsyn's mobile app. Till you hear from us next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bronze Medalist Podcast. I'm Kale.
I'm OJ.
Congratulations.